Hey everybody, welcome back to the Slypatch Podcast. I'm Digital Chimera, you can call me Spencer.
And I'm the captain, you can call me Tyler.
And it's time to ready up. Alright, well today we finally have our wonderful guests on, Nick and Melo from their podcast. How are you guys doing today?
We're doing fine. I'm doing fine.
I'm doing also well.
Great to hear, great to hear. We're going to be talking about Star Wars today with them because they obviously have their Star Wars podcast that they do, and they're much more experts than Tyler and I are, but, you know, we love the fandom and we love the content just as much as anybody else, so...
Yeah, however, and this is something I just love about it, just so that, because people won't see your faces, we want to make sure that they can maybe distinguish your voices. Can you guys introduce yourselves kind of like you do on your podcast?
Sure. I'm Carmelo, and I have been a Star Wars fan since I was 12 when I saw A New Hope a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
And my name is Nick. I am actually the younger cousin of Tyler. I've been watching Star Wars. I was a prequel baby. That was my Star Wars, my introduction.
He was a prequel baby.
I was a prequel baby, but that's okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
All right, and before we get into the meat and potatoes today, we want to go with our warm-up, and we want to talk about everything positive going on in the world. Tyler, you want to start us off with that?
Yeah, man. So, well, it might not seem like a positive thing until you watch the whole thing and understand. We had an extra podcast that Spencer and I decided to record during the week. If you watch it, you'll learn. Like I've been personally struggling with some mental issues myself, and reached out to Spencer one night, asked him to come over. We talked some things out. He helped me, but we realized, that it's a taboo subject to a lot of people in the community, and it shouldn't be, which is what we talk about in that episode. So if you haven't seen it yet, go check it out. But I'm really excited because those who have seen it, we've gotten some amazing feedback on.
Yeah.
And we've had some people at the store reach out to us, some people who don't even come to the store, they're just like personal friends of mine. That's all, the link on my page and stuff. So,
and that, that's exactly what I wanted to see from that episode. Is I wanted to see people who were struggling with something, recognize that they have people that they can, that they can go to, and it's been nice to, I've gotten to know people who go to the store that I don't really talk to all that much, which is pretty cool, and yeah, it's making the exact kind of positive impact that I wanted it to.
Awesome.
For my warm-up, brain. For my warm-up, it is a beautiful day. I am wearing shorts for the first time this year because it is a wonderful 60 degrees, and it's so nice outside. I'm just so happy with it. It's bright, sunny, and it's just a good day out there. My second warm-up is that I'm getting a mattress as a birthday present from some of my family, and I need it because the one I have, the springs are starting to bend, and it sucks. It's been uncomfortable for quite some time, but I'm getting a new mattress on Thursday this week, so I'm very excited. I tested it out, and it's awesome.
I love that your warm-up to your warm-up was it warming up. I'm just saying.
It's warming up in here. It's getting hot.
It's a very literal warm-up.
It's a very literal warm-up.
Yeah, exactly.
Good catch, Tyler.
So, Nick and Melo, I mean, we'll say age before beauty, so we'll let you guys figure out which one that is. No, I'm just kidding. Do either of you guys have something in the warm-up you'd like to talk about?
Go ahead, Nick.
I'll go first. Yeah. So this past week was my spring break, so I kind of got to enjoy a week off, no school. I did work, but no school. I did do a little bit this morning just to kind of play catch up, but it's kind of nice not having to worry about doing any kind of assignments. I got to relax a little bit, spend time with family and friends. So that was really nice. And then other than that, my wife's birthday is at the end of this month, so I've kind of got her cake ordered, got her present already, came in the mail, so I'm very excited for that. It's the end of this month, so kind of knows about it, but I've been very good about keeping coy about it because usually I'm the type of person that once I get somebody a gift, I want to give it to them immediately.
Oh.
So
Yeah.
It's the hardest keeping something.
I know that feeling.
When you know someone's gonna love something and you just have to keep it to yourself and you're just like, how do I? No, I can't.
I don't. That's exactly why I'm a last minute shopper. That's why when Christmas
is that why?
No, 100%.
I mean, that's
100% why.
It's easier to keep from them if you have no idea what you've gotten them.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
You can't get your present early if I don't have it yet.
that's a fair point.
Oh, that's funny. I sympathize with the spring break. I just finished my spring break. I'm starting classes on Tuesday, which I'm also excited about. So,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How about you, Melo?
Very awesome.
How's things going for you?
My warm-up is really, I'm a college professor, and my warm-up is that I am so happy to be teaching in person again.
Awesome.
It's been so wonderful being in the classroom with the students. And the students have come to me and said, Carmelo, it's so nice to be in the room rather than at home because I have no other distractions.
Well, this way
I don't know if it's because they're so excited about being in the classroom. But this semester, my students are amazing. The conversations that we're having have been just incredible.
But this way, they know you actually have pants on.
I always wear pants because I'm always
because you know,
moving.
on a Zoom call, you never know.
You can't see them on the voice, but I'm wearing pants. I'm always
Okay.
wearing pants.
Yeah.
I don't want any accidents. I want to keep my job. No.
Very preferable.
And I do wear pants in class as well.
So wait, then, so
I wear
Melo,
kilts.
does that mean that you doing spring break right now too, or?
No, I am not in spring break. I have one more week of classes, and then I have spring break. Our spring break is it's very late this year. I don't know why.
Gotcha. I'm the only person not associated with college at this time, so it's.
There you go. It happens.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I'm really fortunate to have gotten, I mean, this was my first semester. I was very fortunate to have gotten in at a time where all of the classes, except for like Zoom specific classes, because they still offer online classes at my school.
Yeah, we do too.
All of the classes have moved back to in person, and although I don't think I mind too much doing Zoom classes, I work so much better in the classroom environment, so I can totally empathize with the being back in person, because man, I don't know if I'd have survived like high school if all of my classes were online.
Yeah.
I might not have fucking graduated.
No, and what I love about in person is that it's much easier for me to bond with my students.
Oh yeah.
Before class starts, during breaks, after class ends. It's just that I miss that so much, and it's just wonderful to be in the room. It's just marvelous.
The little things.
Awesome.
Yeah.
The little things, yeah.
It's great to hear.
Having that social setting is always great.
Yeah, it's really important, and I always,
Totally agree.
I always like getting to know my teachers and stuff too. Like,
I'm making sure I can show it in the thing.
Yeah.
So people can see.
Yeah, but I really like getting to know my professors and stuff too. One of my professors, Matt Green, he's awesome, and I've gotten to join his club, and I'm in student leadership with him now, and he's awesome. I've gone out to eat with him already, and I have him again this next term, so I'm super excited about that.
You got him next term too? That's awesome.
Yeah, I've got him for a software architecture class.
That's awesome.
So, but yeah, glad to hear about all the positive things from you guys, and glad to hear about your positive thing, and I'm so glad that everyone's enjoyed the special episode. It means a lot to us, and I think it's time to move into the campaign.
I'm hungry. What about you?
I'm starving.
I can stand.
I just had lunch
right now.
Well,
I just had lunch.
Sorry to let you down, but there's more coming because we've got the meat and potatoes today. We're talking everything Star Wars, guys. Talking everything Star Wars with Nick and Melo, and I think I want to start this with the first question, which you both kind of already answered, but I want to get it a little bit more in depth. My first question for the day was, how did each of us get into Star Wars? Like, how old were we? What did we first see? What was our first introduction? And how did that introduction lead you to this point with the franchise?
Yeah.
how about we start with Melo?
Yeah, because Melo kind of went into that a minute
Sure.
ago, so.
I'm the older one, so mine started before everybody else's.
It's true.
I'm from Puerto Rico, and so I saw it in Puerto Rico. I was 12 when I saw the very first movie, what we now call A New Hope, the new Star Wars movie. And I actually remember seeing the trailer for it. And I remember the breathing of Darth Vader, and I remember Luke and Leia jumping on the rope inside the Death Star. I don't remember anything else. I don't remember music. Those are the two things that sort of stayed in my head. And I remember when I saw it, I saw it many, 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 many times. And it was really interesting because I was a really big fan of Star Wars during the original trilogy. And then I grew up and I was in graduate school and working really hard when the prequels started. So I did watch them, and I watched them very, very often, and I loved them very much. But I was already sort of grown, and it was tough for me to sort of be as big a fan as I was when I was a kid. But then when the sequel trilogy came, I came back with a vengeance. I was just so excited that there was going to be more Star Wars films. And it was sort of a little comeback for me. And it's been nonstop since 2015. It's been nonstop for me. It's been a marvelous little trip.
That's awesome. And since we're going with oldest to youngest, Tyler.
Oh, okay, yeah.
How did you get introduced to Star Wars?
So that's actually really interesting because I actually am right in between. Okay, so like, Melo's old enough to have been around for the original series.
Yeah.
That was pre me by about like 7 or 8 years, like I wasn't born until the mid 80s.
Yeah.
So, and then the prequels didn't happen until like the late 90s, early 2000s, right?
Yeah.
So
right.
I was in high school, about to graduate high school when the prequels were going on. So I had seen the original 3, or the middle 3, however, depends on how people want to look at it, right? Just due to the fact that my parents or somebody in my family might have watched it or something. But I wasn't like huge into it, didn't know much about it. So the prequels are actually what got me into even being interested in it like fully. And then I watched those, and because I watched those, I was like, oh, now I got to watch these other ones that actually go in order.
Yeah.
Now all this makes sense, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course, as Melo said, when I heard about the next, the final trilogy of it coming out, me and Nick, we were like, dude. We connect on all kinds of other nerdy stuff, but like when it comes to Star Wars, it's like, hey man, this is coming out. So
that's awesome.
So yeah, I mean, it was a weird thing where I didn't really get introduced to it until a little bit later, almost adulthood, because of just where I'm at in the generational gap.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, Nick.
So this is a weird entry point, but my first movie that I actually watched was Revenge of the Sith. I was about 10 years old or so. So I remember seeing it, and I had seen Star Wars, like, I think I'd seen the Clone Wars animated show on Cartoon Network, and I'd seen bits and pieces of the older films, but for some reason it never really jumped at me. Like, I was never interested in it that much. And then I watched Revenge of the Sith, and it kind of, like, changed everything. I thought that was pretty unexpected. I wasn't expecting to like it so much, but then of course I watched that, then I have to go back and watch episodes 1 and 2, then the original trilogy, and just grew from there. And then of course, like everybody else said, when Disney decided they're going to make another trilogy, we all were like floored. Nobody expected that, so it's been ever since then.
Yeah. Well, for me, I was 4. I was 4. My family had just bought the VHS tape for Attack of the Clones, episode 2. And
Nice.
I watched it with my family, and I loved it so much that I watched it on repeat, not knowing that there were other movies because I was 4. And then I watched it probably like half a dozen times before I realized that there were other Star Wars movies. So then I got the experience, probably by the time I was 5 or 6, to then watch Phantom Menace and the original trilogy. And then what the Revenge of the Sith probably came out in what, 06 or 07?
05.
Oh, was that 05? Okay, so I don't
05.
think I watched it until I was 6 or 7 though, so I probably didn't watch it until 07. But yeah, when I got to see Revenge of the Sith, you know, finally the saga was complete for me, and I was just like in love with it. And I actually, fun fact, I haven't seen the original trilogy since I was probably 6.
Wow.
Wow!
I haven't seen it in 16 years, probably. I need
movie marathon.
Yeah, no, I know.
Okay,
that
I think we need to sit down with you and
adult.
watch it again.
I mean, I've seen. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I've seen a lot of the clips, and I know the whole story, but I do need to at some point sit down and watch it all again.
Nick is coming to visit soon, and
Yeah.
Melo's not that far away.
Yeah, Melo, you should
Watch
come
party.
up and we should watch party and marathon marathon the original trilogy. That would be awesome. I'd love to do that with you guys. But yeah, so that and then you know, I was probably 12 when Disney bought Lucasfilm, and then
God bless.
and then
you are so dating yourself. You are so dating yourself.
no, I'm dating you guys.
Oh my gosh,
But yeah, and so like it was exciting to me at the time because I did really like a lot of Disney movies and stuff, and I was like, I'm excited to see why they wanted to buy it, because like they hadn't announced anything yet, but like it was very public that they were purchasing Lucasfilm from George Lucas. And you know, I had seen a little bit of like the Clone Wars series, which I was into, and I only actually recently went back and watched the whole thing through. But yeah, and then, you know, even though I've been in it pretty much my entire conscious existence, when the sequel trilogy started coming out, it was like just broadening my horizons, and since then I've gone back to watch the Clone Wars. I've rewatched Revenge of the Sith since I didn't really remember it all that well. I went back and I watched, you know, the Rebels TV show, which was so good, and I've always been in love with the franchise. I remember one of my other first experiences with Star Wars was Battlefront 2 on PC.
Yeah.
2005
Oh, yeah.
Battlefront 2. And
Great
I was
game.
in love with that too, but yeah, I've been in love with the franchise for as long as I can remember, so.
So I want to transition kind of from something you were talking about there, right? Where you're talking about where Disney, you know, takes over
Yeah.
everything. So I mean, I'm going to ask Melo and Nick this opinion, you know. So then let's go into like the auxiliary type things, right? So like most everybody knows about the main franchise of the movies, right? Like you got the 3 different trilogies and stuff like that. But then you have like your auxiliary things like your Rogue Ones, your Mandalorian that's on Disney Plus, and just different things like that. And we don't have to cover every single one, but my question to you guys is, you know, how does that add to the lore for you guys? And is there anything like any of those that feel like they're not truly canon, but you know, like, but they technically are because they are, you know, in the canon, like.
Nick, you want to go? Do you want me to go?
Go.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll go. So
Go ahead.
I think it's funny how, you know, Spencer, he said he hasn't rewatched the original trilogy since he was very young. You know, I rewatched them, you know, with my wife when we first got together, and then with friends over the years. To me, I kind of, when I go rewatch something Star Wars, it's usually never the films. It's usually animated series, Mandalorian. I've rewatched it 3 or 4 times now. Haven't rewatched the Book of Boba Fett yet. I may let it give me some air before I do that, but I've always felt that
But by the
Star
way,
Wars.
no spoilers on that because we still haven't.
No spoilers.
No
spoilers.
okay.
I'm only halfway through it.
Yeah, we're only we
No,
didn't
no
finish it.
spoilers. No promises. Or no spoilers. I promise.
He said,
No spoilers, no promises.
No promises. I'm gonna tell you
My bad.
everything.
I jumbled that up. I jumbled that up. My fault.
No, it's
okay.
good.
So I guess what I was saying was, you know, to me the movies, you know, they give you a very broad, what's going on in the galaxy. What's, you know, the main story. You know, we follow just a certain amount of characters, but I think what the ancillary series, I guess you could call them, Mandalorian and Rebels and Clone Wars, they do a really good job of fleshing out the rest of the galaxy, the broader picture.
Yeah, and I'm glad you say that because that's one of the things for me it's funny because when I say that and people say that certain things don't feel canon, this is why I brought up the question the way I did. Is like for me personally, it's like okay, no, it doesn't fit the Skywalker saga, but the Skywalker saga is not the entirety of the Star Wars galaxy. So like, it's so hard for some people to relate that and understand.
Yeah, I agree with that because for me, like a lot of people view Star Wars as the Skywalker saga, but like what we learn from it is, and what we learn especially from the ancillary series, is that the galaxy's so freaking big. There's so much. There's infinite stories to tell there. There's so many stories to tell. And there's also, it was a long time ago, but even in the Skywalker saga, the galaxy as a galactic civilization has been around for tens of thousands of years too.
Correct.
So like there's stories in such a vast space to tell in so many different timelines too, that it's just like there's so much to flesh out.
Absolutely. Melo,
I think one of the things that I love about the many formats is that they can tell the story in different ways. And so movies have a certain way of telling stories, but then television, because of the episodic nature of them, they can develop character, they can tell stories in such a long arc that a movie can never do.
Yeah.
And so it's really exciting to get the sort of like the best of what movies can do with the Skywalker saga, but then the best of what television can do with characters like Mando or Ahsoka or Anakin between episodes 2 and 3. And then adding things like fiction, the things that novels can do, that visuals cannot do, about sort of internal characterization and characters thinking through ideas, which on television would just look really funny if they're speaking out loud all these things. But in literature, it's absolutely normal to be introspective about a character. And so what I love about the different formats is that you get different kinds of storytelling. And that I find absolutely amazing.
Although, when you talk about, people talking out loud, and that's why I'm a Deadpool fan, because he doesn't care.
That's true. That's true. That is not the normal, however.
I'm not normal. That's why.
Right.
That's fair. That's fair. You're not normal. It's true.
No, but your question. I mean, this question could be like the next 3 hours of conversation, because Star Wars is huge, and it's thanks to all of those formats that we can get so many stories.
Absolutely.
I mean, it speaking of like the many formats too, I've talked about this on the podcast before. Me and my friends, we actually play a role-playing game set in Star Wars. I play a budding Jedi during the Age of Rebellion, sort of right on the cusp of the Mandalorian Purge. I'm friends with a Mandalorian as a Jedi. We're both working for the Rebellion at the moment, because the Empire is a bigger problem to the both of us.
Right.
And like that, like if I could put that in a TV show, that would be so freaking cool. But like we get to tell that story ourselves, and that's really special to us too. And so like, and what FFG did with that Star Wars role-playing system was really cool. But like we have the novels, we have the graphic novels and the comics and stuff. We have the TV shows, animated or otherwise. We have the movies, and we also have these ancillary stories, like you were saying, like the not part of the main saga movies, like Rogue One and Solo. I thought Rogue One, in my honest opinion, is the best Star Wars movie. Like
it's really wonderful.
Down. It's so good.
I think the fact that it didn't have, I mean, it was based in that, Skywalker saga, don't get me wrong, but the fact that it wasn't about, like, that main story as far as how people usually view it because of, like, the Anakins, the Lukes, those main characters, right? But it showed a great piece of like without Rogue One, without what happened in Rogue One, so many other things would have been different in the in the universe, right?
A New Hope would be an entirely different.
Yeah,
movie.
exactly. There would be no New Hope. That's Rogue One is what set off the New Hope thing, right? So,
True. Very true.
Exactly.
Very true.
So I mean, that's the thing about it is it's really cool. Like you're saying, I agree. Like Rogue One is probably one of my favorite movies to watch as well, just as a movie in general.
Yeah, as a movie, it's easily in my top 5.
Yeah, just as a movie in general, just solely because even if you didn't know anything about the rest of what was going on in the okay, the best way I can put it is like or compare it is I'm a huge Firefly fan.
Yeah.
Okay. And unfortunately,
there's 2 of us now.
But huge Firefly fan. But the movie
I'm a huge Firefly fan. Yes.
The movie Serenity, not Serendipity. Sorry, I like the movie Serendipity too, but love John Cusack, Kate Beckinsale. But the movie Serenity, which was the end all for Firefly, right? You could watch that movie. You could have never watched an episode of Firefly. You could watch that movie and it was a great movie.
Yeah.
And that's what's really cool about Rogue One to me is you can watch that movie, not know a damn thing about the whole universe, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, this is a great movie. But after you watch the movie, you go, man, I got to learn about this other shit.
Yeah. So, because the thing, one of the things I do like about Star Wars, which I kind of noted on earlier, is that the galaxy is so big, and what Rogue One did for me personally was we have this overarching Skywalker saga, which obviously involves billions of people, trillions of people across the galaxy, with how the Empire affects people, but then with Rogue One, you sort of get that you narrow in on the people that it's affecting, right? And the smaller amount of people that all of this is working with, because with the Skywalker saga, you have these really big important figures, but you have this life or death scenario for these characters going through this problem to make sure that they can provide a better future for the rest of the galaxy, and it ends in absolute tragedy. Everyone on Rogue One dies.
Spoilers.
It's been out for 6 years.
Too late. Too late.
Yeah, but there's people
the other thing that I love about Rogue One.
Maybe they haven't seen it.
I didn't say that.
I didn't say that. It's the first time we're gonna have to edit a video. No,
but it puts it all into perspective, right? Because these people are fighting so hard for something that they won't be able to even experience, and it narrows it down to that point, and then you get the zoom out where Darth Vader's walking onto the ship and Leia's there with the plans for the Death Star, and it's this is where the second trilogy begins,
where it all begins.
It sort of narrows in and then zooms back out, and it's just all of that was so integral to the rest of the saga.
And I'm wondering, I hope that's what I love is right. So the original or the prequels, Rogue One fits in the middle, original trilogy, right? We don't have that gapper right now for the original trilogy and the final trilogy.
The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett are in a way sort of filling a little bit of that blank.
And like you said, from a TV episodic standpoint, that's really awesome, right? But again, I would,
You want a movie about how the first order came to be or something?
Stuff like that, yeah. Because
here we go.
If we sit down, to do a movie night, right? Or we want to do a marathon, we watch all of them, okay? It's okay, I gotta watch 18 episodes of Disney Plus, to get my gap.
Welcome to Star Wars.
Welcome
to Star Wars.
Yeah.
This is what is really interesting about Star Wars right now. We live in the golden age of television. We don't live in the golden age of cinema. Cinema is an old form. And so it's really interesting that Disney's being very smart about this and saying the great writing is happening on television now, not on cinema. The audiences are watching more television, and the movie theaters are empty. I just went to see a movie about 2 weeks ago, and there were 6 of us. And so it's really fascinating how they're sort of following the trends of writing and production in media as is happening now, by sort of focusing so much on television and focusing a lot less
But
on
do you
cinema.
think that?
And I think that's part of the trend. That's part of the trend.
Yeah, but is the trend there because of necessity or because it was actually going to trend that way anyway? Because the argument could be made that a lot of that, it's only been 2 years. It's only been 2 years, but things happen quickly and move quickly, in our age and our age of technology, that 3-4 years ago you might not be able to say the same thing. That you thought that movies were way better.
Oh,
right?
I don't know.
I think that trend was already starting, and it's been exacerbated by the pandemic, because Mandalorian started filming before the pandemic.
Oh yeah.
And
and
we have like, one of the things that I noticed is the sequel trilogy got a lot of bad rap, and I agree that some of it was like, it wasn't my favorite. I enjoyed sitting and watching them, but like, critically speaking, I didn't like them as much as a lot of the other Star Wars movies. But I think a lot of that has to do with, we are moving away from using, or maybe it's just not, maybe it's just that people aren't as good at writing cinema as they used to be. I'm not sure what the real answer is there.
I don't think it's that at all. I think it has to do a lot with, just like we want our 30-second McDonald's and all those other things, you can sit down and watch a 30-minute, maybe even an hour-long episode a lot easier than you can an hour-and-a-half, 2-hour-long movie. And so people with their lack of patience and their lack of attention, that's why it's moving that way. I that's just my personal opinion, because again, being from a different generation, from like your generation and next generation, stuff like that, and even though Melo is an older generation than me, like, for me personally, like, for example, I'll give you an example. I didn't get a smartphone until like years after they had made smartphones. I hated them because I hated the whole everybody walking around and then stuff was like this, right? I only have.
Well, it was the Walkman of the 1980s. I remember that.
Right.
Everybody was like, everybody's listening to music, nobody's talking to anybody.
Yeah. But like the point I'm trying to make there is, like, I didn't get the smartphone like that because like, when I get into something, I want to, actually get into it. And the problem is like, there are times now where I get on my phone like for hours and don't even mean to. I think the way we're consuming things now is a part of why.
Oh, I think so too, but I also think that the storytelling in TV is better.
But that's probably because of paying. They're paying, like, you pay for it. Like, companies understand trends like that. Companies understand people and things like that. And so, yeah, we may have been trending that way, and it may have been exacerbated by the pandemic, But I feel like a lot of that has to do with people's attention spans and, like, companies understanding what they put their money where.
I agree with you, but I look at what they did with the sequel trilogy, and a lot of people are toxic about it and stuff. But the sequel trilogy was, for most Star Wars fans, not good, right? But what they've done with the TV shows has allowed them to tell stories in such a way where we, as a community, love them. I cannot think of many people who, in the Star Wars community, that don't like they hated the sequels, but they really like the Mandalorian and stuff.
Go ahead, Melo.
And I think they learned. I think Disney and Lucasfilm, and it's one of the things that I think it's important to say is that we tend to blend these two corporations as one, and they are not. Disney bought Lucasfilm, but Lucasfilm is still a corporation that makes directorial writing and all sorts of decisions, where Disney is sort of saying yes, but they're not making those decisions. And so I think one of the things to keep in mind is that live action television Star Wars learned from the mistakes of the sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
And so the first attempt of Disney in sort of screen Star Wars, what I call screen Star Wars, television and film, was the films. And then from those mistakes, then they said, okay, how do we do this? Because the really interesting thing about both the sequel trilogy and Mandalorian is that there is a lot of fan service in it. We got to insert this, we got to insert that, we got to show this, we got to show that.
Well,
it's
I think
all very much about sort of the nostalgia of Star Wars.
Yeah.
But,
but I think
the technique in the movies didn't work for a lot of fans. And so they went back to the drawing board and they said, how the fuck do we fix this?
I think,
and that's the Mandalorian.
And I think the technique, hold on, I'm sorry, Nick, and I'll let you talk, but I think the technique of the movies where they screwed up is that they tried to make it into an Avengers type of movie, you know what I'm saying, or an MCU type of movie. Like, you know, Disney had such success with the MCU stuff that they wanted to make it like that kind of flow of that type of movie, and that's not what Star Wars is.
Yeah, it just didn't mesh with the franchise.
Yeah, that's just my personal opinion.
Oh, I agree with that.
Go ahead, Nick. What were you saying?
I was just gonna say, I think like the way this after. I think the success of The Mandalorian kind of is the reason why we're getting a lot more TV shows, more so than like maybe the failure of the sequels. And I think
totally agree.
I think I do think the sequels obviously had their flaws, but I think after the success of The Mandalorian and the pandemic obviously probably helped a lot too. They realized that, you know, people are going to be at home more. You could stay home and watch these. And it's cheaper to make than a movie. A movie is a very expensive project.
Yes.
So you can make these shows for much cheaper, and you know, tell a longer format. And the way they release the episodes, it's once a week, so it's not a movie will be out for a month and everybody stop talking about it. And we'll talk about The Mandalorian for 2 or 3 months. They'll build up, and then the aftermath, and it's much more conversation, much more clicks.
Yeah,
and I think also this is just my personal little tinfoil hat theory. I think we have not heard really many movies announced about Star Wars. They're very
correct
down the line. But I have a feeling they're going to stick to the streaming and kind of let it play out. And I feel like there'd be episode 10 or maybe something different. I feel like eventually, maybe 10 years from now, they're going to announce a new Star Wars movie, and it's going to be huge because we hadn't seen a Star Wars movie in so long. Yeah. That's why the build-up is going to be back. The hype will be back, you know?
But, sorry, a point that you made, and that's kind of what I was going into when I was saying that, is about the writing, right, and where the writers are. Like, it is cheaper to make a TV show, you know, because of, just like you were talking about, so they can afford to pay the writers a little bit more than like that they would on like a movie, and you know that's why I think that trend is moving that way. Is like the talent. It's just like in sports, you know, like. Teams will be good for a while, and then they start to become bad because as salary caps hit and things like that, then now they can afford to pay these newer, younger players that are better. You know, I know that's hard for you to understand what sports.
I totally understand that.
So it's kind of like the same thing. That's what's going on in like the movie to TV production right now, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Because you could even go back to you're talking about the golden eras of things, right? Like there were golden eras of TV as well back in the 70s and 80s. Because that when the sitcoms, or even in the early '90s, right? I mean, TGIF and things like that me and that I grew up with, like there was always really good shows in that era, and it was like between the late '90s to like about 3 or 4 years ago, it was all movie stuff. Movies had the better writing, the TV shows had kind of dipped down. So yeah, I mean, I agree that there's the trends, and we're probably heading that way. But yeah, it's just like.
Remember that when Star Wars comes out, Jaws had come out just before, Close Encounters, Raiders of the Lost Ark. All of those movies saved Hollywood. Hollywood was a mess in the 60s because everybody was watching TV.
Yep.
And so this sort of movement of, on the one hand, sort of independent cinema like Taxi Driver by Scorsese and all of those films that sort of make a more greedy version of Hollywood. And then the blockbusters of action adventure and sci-fi all throughout the 70s, in a way, changed the industry completely. And so one of the remarkable things about Star Wars is that it's part of a trend in which how you consume movies changes. And from the 70s on, 70s, 80s, and 90s, there's this sort of trend that what Hollywood needs to do to save itself is to make a blockbuster. the idea of a blockbuster didn't exist in the 60s. It started with Star Wars and Close Encounters and Jaws and all of those movies. And so it's really interesting to see how storytelling always connects to industry.
The word.
Those two things are always very much related. And I like very much what you're saying about television and writing, because
hold on, Melo, hold on. You're getting too far. Hold on, I want you to finish that. But
sorry.
Before you get too far from the word, I'm trying to. No, I know you're a teacher, but teachers are used to just giving their lecture.
Sorry.
It's okay. You're fine. You
use the word, and it's blockbuster, and blockbuster is great to speak about what we're talking about as the video store, right?
Yeah.
It was like, look at its trend.
Yes, that too. Right.
Like in the same time period that we're talking about, right?
Yeah, I mean, it rose
a little later,
rose to the heights of power during my childhood, and by the time I was in high school, it was dead.
And that's what happens with a lot of industries like that, right?
Correct.
And as technology changed, obviously, like where they messed up is they could have been what Netflix is.
Oh yeah, if Blockbuster had came out with a streaming service,
they
Blockbuster
could have,
would still be around.
Yeah, they could have, and they were like, nah, those guys are a flash in the pan. You know, that's what they thought. Yeah, that
and
happens.
now they don't exist.
But the point is they came in the heart of when all that was mattered, and then they died off, because of the other stuff. Yep. But yeah, go ahead, Melo. Go ahead and finish what you were saying. I'm sorry. You said the word blockbuster, so it was...
I'm just sort of agreeing. I was agreeing with what you were talking about before, about how much the notion of industry and how these things are made connects to the way the stories are told. And now it is infinitely more effective to make television because you make an episode in 2 days, 3 days. Like Mandalorian, every episode was made in less than 3 days. When you make a movie, it's weeks of filming and weeks of post-production. But you're absolutely right about how those two things connect to each other.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when you put a whole season of, with Mandalorian, 8 episodes, the whole filming process and the whole everything takes about the same time as a movie, except it's 8 hours of content rather than 2 or 3, right? So like the cost and the time is pretty similar, but the cost and time per minute of watch time is so much more effective for them. And so it's better for that industry, at least at the moment. And I'm super excited because I've been so enjoying the stuff they've been putting out, and I'm really excited. I mean, they've got 3 shows that they've announced, not to mention however many more that they haven't told us about. We've got Obi-Wan coming soon. We've got Ahsoka on the docket. We've got Andor on the docket.
Yep. The second season of Bad Batch.
Oh yeah. Oh, I forgot. I even forgot about Bad Batch.
No, don't forget about
Bad Batch, man.
There's so much Star Wars.
There is.
I'm focused on Boba Fett right now.
And this was something that I was going to bring up, and this is why, Melo said something earlier about and that's what's really cool is that's why they have an entire podcast dedicated. And so we're not going to squeeze everything into this episode, obviously.
We can't.
Hopefully we can make our own trilogy.
Unless we want to... We could make a 24-hour-long podcast and talk about everything.
Well, no, Melo's got friends coming over.
It's true.
Well, but he can come back. If we're doing 24 hours, he can come back into the podcast.
Yeah, you could leave for a few hours.
And come back.
And come back,
we can do rotations.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
I could drive to Milwaukee and join you there.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Heck, Nick could in that time.
That's right.
He'd miss half of it. He'd miss half of it, but yeah.
You could be on the phone on the way.
Yeah, you could do it on the phone. There you go.
Discord on the phone and
while you're driving.
Yeah.
And then you hear, "Oh shit, got away!" Oh, well, Nick made it to Chicago. He's in the traffic there.
All right, made it to Chicago. It'll be another 3 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
Indeed.
But anyway, the point I was trying to make with that is that this will this will be our first time having Nick and Melo on, but hopefully we will have them on in the future as well.
Yeah.
As schedules and everything can provide, because we this is a subject we all love, but again, it's just like we're going to have multiple Magic episodes. We'll probably have multiple episodes on things like we'll rehash some topics that we talk about, just because in as short of a podcast as we have, because we do so many generalized things, we're never gonna get everything in.
Yeah, and especially with Star Wars right now, there's so much new coming out at such a speed that even just given a year, if we're still doing the podcast, then there's going to be 70 new things to talk about with Star Wars, whether it's comics or books or.
You better still be doing the podcast with me in a year.
I fucking hope so. I fucking hope so.
But it's really interesting how our conversation today is actually very different from the conversations that Nick and I have had in our podcast.
Yes.
So it's sort of fun to have this conversation with you guys because you have brought up some really interesting things that we have touched on, but not at the level that you guys have. So this is awesome.
Also, too, you said there's a ton of Star Wars coming, and we just talked about like stuff that's going to be on screen. If anybody listening reads comics, reads books, video games, there's so much coming out. Not even including the TV shows or anything like that.
I mean, I'm really excited to see Star Wars Eclipse coming, which is their it's going to be an open world thing.
High Republic era.
Yeah. I got the High Republic books for Christmas. I still haven't read those. I still have to finish Boba Fett, and then there's so much Star Wars, and I'm so excited, but I also just don't have the time.
I feel bad in the future episodes. We'll definitely set up to do this, but both Nick and Melo, you guys can't see them on video. They have Star Wars shirts on too.
Yeah, they do.
And so I'm like, I feel bad because they're like, hey, we got dressed up for this and everything. It's like, hey,
I was going to. I just totally forgot.
It's like asking my wife to go on a date, and she gets all dressed up. I'm like, well, I just meant we were going to order DoorDash and watch something on Netflix. No one's going to see that. No one's only I'm going to see that.
Well, sometimes that's worth it.
Yeah.
We appreciate you guys so much. So yeah, one of the other things I wanted to talk about is, there is a lot of negative talk around the sequels for the various reasons that we know, but I wanted to get your guys' opinions on the sequels as a whole and like how you guys felt about them, because like obviously for a lot of people it got people back into Star Wars, even if a lot of people didn't like it necessarily. And I just kind of wanted to bring that up with you guys and see what your thoughts on it were.
Nick, you start this one.
Okay. I for me personally, I enjoyed them as they were coming out, and I think we've talked about it in our podcast a lot. I think we're not fans of kind of nostalgia per se of going back to the well, and I feel like sequels introduced a lot of cool ideas, but I feel like they were hindered a lot by what came before them. They didn't try to expand Star Wars. They didn't try to make their own footing. And as me being from the prequel generation, those were, like I said, my entry to Star Wars. I heard a lot of that growing up, that the prequels that's not real Star Wars. That's definitely that's not what I grew up with. And I hear the same rhetoric just about the sequels.
Exactly,
but given what the prequels were, they still did attempt to tell their own story. And while, like I said, I do enjoy various moments of the sequels, I feel like a lot of times we back to that same well of what was popular before.
And which one was it that you and I went to see?
We went to see Last Jedi. That's the one we saw. Yeah. And I like them all. It's Star Wars. I love Star Wars more than anything, other than my wife and family. But I just enjoyed them. Some of them I watch more than others. I don't think it closed as liked as
He knows Haley's going to watch this, so he had to throw that in there. He's a smart man. He's a smart man. He's a smart man.
Big brain. Nick's got big brain syndrome.
Yep.
That's awesome.
It's my favorite thing. Well, except for my wife and my cats and my family. Melo, what about you, buddy?
I'm sorry. I love them. I just adored them.
I think that's great.
I love that they were different. I love the idea of a renegade stormtrooper. I love the arc of Luke Skywalker being cynical about life.
Too.
I love having sort of a female Force-sensitive main character. There were just so many little things about it that I was just, I mean, every time I see Force Awakens, my face hurts by the end because I'm smiling the entire time. The thing is that Star Wars is always full of holes. Star Wars always
totally.
makes me roll my eyes. I mean, it just in all of them, there's always this like, oh come on, it always happens. And so for me, the sequel trilogy had the sort of element. I found them refreshing, even with all the mistakes and all the holes and all the things that I could have fixed, that I could have changed. I agree with the fandom that it would be awesome to get a larger arc with Finn because he was such an interesting character and they just didn't know what to do with him. I agree with all those things,
They could,
but I still enjoyed it.
They could also make, because you're talking about the holes. The holes are being filled by things like Mando and all this.
That's exactly right.
They can expound on
That's exactly right.
And that would be really cool. And then, I mean, like that'd be super cool. And one of the points that you brought up there, for me personally, was like you brought up with Luke. Okay, is Luke was part of the New Hope. Like he was, him and Leia. Right. Obviously, they were the New Hope, right? And so going to see him, from the point of he was the bright-eyed, that's one of the things though for Star Wars that always got me was like this dude like trained to be a Jedi in like a week, like what, but anyway, so anyway, this guy, he's the New Hope. He's like the brightness in the world, and then when we get to the sequels, by the time we get to the sequels, he's like, this is all bullshit, like basically, and it's like. What? Like, what? Where is that character flip coming from?
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, I'm conflicted on it, but I also really like how refreshing that take is because there's always such a negative take on it, and I have a little bit of that, but also I really like to hear the refreshing take of, it makes him more real in a way. But one of the things that you brought up that I wanted to sort of expound on was like the reason George Lucas called it a space opera and not science fiction is because the idea of space opera is that it is going to be just a little ridiculous at times, and there's going to be plot holes and there's going to be stuff like that. And one of the things that I always think about that from like someone who likes to be immersed and likes it to feel real, one of the things in Star Wars that bothers me sometimes, although it makes sense in the frame of reference that Star Wars has, is how easily someone can be, flipped from good to bad. But, that's just like that's how the Force works with Force-sensitive people. Like, they have more emotion, and that emotion can be so corrupted by the Force. Or reverse flipped, I mean, with Anakin, it took a lot more time and there was a lot more going on, but we see in older games like Knights of the Old Republic where people would flip from one side to the other in matter of moments, or even just, with Darth Vader in the very end of episode 6 when he's just like, fuck it, I'm a good guy now, and now he's a good guy because he's like there now, right? Like that's a little bit ridiculous from like a realist immersive standpoint, but it's also really interesting and powerful, and because it's a space opera and not science fiction, it's not supposed to be real. It's not supposed to be real.
And you say that, but sorry, Nick, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, you say that it seems ridiculous, but it speaks to the human condition.
Oh, it totally does.
Yes.
It totally speaks to the human psyche, the human condition, and how, like, they talk about, like, just from, like, certain religious standpoints, for example, that you can, certain people will, just on their deathbed, regret all these bad things that they did in life and wish, to be something different. So in their last moments, they try and be that. Mm-hmm. And the reason why they're able to do it so well is because of how opposite it is. It's very easy to be an exact opposite of something. It's hard to be sort of opposite of something, right? And so that's why it's not as ridiculous, because it's like we find it to be ridiculous because we're so used to our human interactions where people usually aren't that way. People it takes people time to change and grow and learn and learn from their mistakes. But in doing it from a movie standpoint, I mean, they also didn't have time to do another because like you're watching the movie, and when that happens with Darth, like it's in like a 5 minute section of a movie, right?
Yeah.
But the actual like time period in that is like, how long were they actually fighting? How long was all this going on? Like it could have been hours. We don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like he could have been sitting there with Darth for like an hour while he's almost dying. Like whatever. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's hard to grasp the concept of this guy was the big baddie for all of this, and then 5 minutes of it now he's a good guy. Like it is hard to kind of conceive, but it's not impossible.
But then they also, even though it's like, even though it's like sort of not immersive in that way, they also have a decent enough explanation for it, and how that's just how the Force works with Force sensitive people, in that the Force is sort of it's emotion, it's raw power, it's energy that exists in all living things, and so like it can so affect someone that way. And why emotion is so tied to the Force, the more emotion you have, the more closer to the dark side you are. So it also makes sense in that way. And I really liked, and going back to my original question with the the sequels, I really liked the Force dyad thing between Rey and Kylo.
Oh yeah,
I thought it was
cool.
I thought it was really, really interesting in how they were so linked and tied. And at the very end, even not at the very end, even in episode 2, they were like fighting alongside each other at times before they finally came together at the very end. And that was it was so special to me. Like there were moments where I was like, wow, this is kind of meh, but then there were also moments where like I was just grinning. Like that scene where they killed Snoke and fight all of those guards was like, it was so good.
Yes.
It was so
yes.
good.
Beautiful.
It was so powerful and emotional and
And that speaks to the space opera thing you're talking about. Like that's something you would see in an opera.
Totally.
It gives you that kind of, and that's what's cool about operas as well, and how the stories have been told is there are peaks, they're like climaxes and valleys throughout an opera. Like operas don't just go, they're just not one straight arc. It's up and down, up and down, up and down. That's what makes operas really awesome. So
you took my words out of my mouth, because I was going to talk about opera and the emotional impact of melodrama, and that's what Star Wars does. I completely agree. It's not science fiction. It's an opera. It really is.
Totally is.
I gotta go back to my...
Nick was something. Go ahead, Nick.
When you guys were backpedal a little bit, but you guys, when you were talking about Vader and his turn, I think it kind of just speaks to like one of the major themes of Star Wars for me, is that, but regardless of all the bad things you've done or the horrific things that somebody can do, they can always make the right decision. They can always do the right thing. And then we, not just Vader, we see multiple characters throughout the animated series and novels. They've been bad, but then they have a moment where it's a deciding factor where they have to choose: am I going to do the right thing, or am I going to continue down this path? And I think that's just constant through Star Wars.
I 100% agree, and one of the things I love is that it also does the opposite. Someone who is a good person can also make the wrong decision at the wrong time.
Yep.
And they flip-flop like people sometimes do. And one of the really cool things that I loved in the Clone Wars was I really loved the story of Asajj Ventress.
Yes.
Asajj Ventress was
We
such
love
an
Asajj.
awesome,
She's an incredible
awesome
character.
We love Asajj
and
Ventress.
she ended up being I wouldn't necessarily say she ended up being a good person, but she did end up making the right decisions. And she wasn't like goody two shoes at the end, but like she wasn't the innate hateful Sith that she was being groomed to be by Dooku at the time. And that was, that whole arc, especially at the end when she was working with Ahsoka, was really powerful to me.
Yep.
She's great.
Yeah. Well, I think so. So the overall, concept is, again, coming from the psychology background, Nick will, understand and appreciate this as well, is I think a lot of what tries to be told in the storyline is that too much of anything can be a bad thing, even too much good. For example, when you talk about like the Jedi Council and things like that, and their very black and white type of view on things and stuff. how that can actually be a bad thing, but it also speaks to in certain things too, where, that light can brighten any darkness. You know what I'm saying? At any moment, it can be the darkest that it's ever been, like with someone like Vader, someone like Kylo, and their arcs. Those are just for the people who know the main characters, right?
Yeah.
That just the smallest bit of light gets in there, and it can change it. And I think that speaks to those moments.
Yeah. Well, that. This is a little bit of a tangent and going a tiny bit off
You
topic.
on a what?
Me on a tangent? Well, that's crazy.
This is going to be another 2-hour podcast, guys.
It's possible. That there's a light in the darkest of places. Mm-hmm. That reminds me so deeply of Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. When Sam grabs the light of, I don't remember the name, but the little like glass vial that has the stuff in it, and he grabs the sword and he goes and wounds the spider. Apparently, like, he's the only person, man or otherwise, to ever wound that creature. Like, nobody's ever fucked with it. And he goes up just to save Frodo. He grabs it and he blinds it in the face, stabs it in the gut, and saves Frodo's life. And that kind of scene and imagery happens so often in Star Wars.
Yeah.
That kind of powerful, like, and a lot of Star Wars is about hope, and it's about, we have A New Hope, we have all of those things, and it's just like, everything seems so bleak, but then there's this. Mm-hmm. And
I think one of the... Go ahead, finish.
No, that was it. I was done.
One of the things that I find really interesting about the sort of Disney era of Star Wars is that paradoxically, things get really complex. A show like Star Wars Rebels, and the main character, Ezra Bridger, is somebody who is very, very confused about the idea of the light versus the dark side of the Force. Mm-hmm. And that in order for him to do the right thing, you need to do things that might look bad. And I love that complexity of that character, that is constantly sort of saying, no. The idea is to kill the Sith. If we need to learn from the Sith, we learn from the Sith to destroy the Sith. That is not the good versus evil of the very first movies in the 1970s.
Oh, it's not.
The good were good, the bad were bad. And so I find it really fascinating. And you mentioned the dyad of Kylo and Rey. And that is another really interesting example of the notion of the good and the notion of the bad is more complex than simply binary opposites. And I love that about sort of the newer Star Wars.
Well, and what I loved about those two in particular in that is it really reminded me of Yin and Yang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The entire everything.
The great balance.
Don't get me wrong. I'm just on those two specifically in that dialect. You guys are talking about, right? Is like they were like a direct representation of the Yin and Yang for everything that because Rey, even though she was the good guy, she wasn't perfect.
Yep.
Oh no, she wasn't.
Yep.
And then Kylo, of course, had that battle within himself where he was in the darkness. But there was still that light that was trying so hard,
and he was fighting it with everything he had.
Yeah, exactly. And he had
also
to fight it so hard.
Also, their lineage, Rey being a Palpatine and then him being a Skywalker. So, like that other yin yang kind of dyad.
And that was cool. I was about to bring that up, which was but thank you for interjecting that. Exactly. Yeah. Because that was what was really cool. Because she comes from the lineage of, the evilest of evil, in the story, and he comes from what the lineage is supposed to be, again, as was originally introduced as the New Hope and all this, right? So that whole dynamic is amazing in Star Wars as well.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And one thing that I always like to refer to as Star Wars and the good and the bad is that the whole prophecy that involved Anakin and ultimately Rey too, and the Skywalkers and the Palpatines, was that it was ultimately the Force balancing itself, right? Because there was so much power with the Jedi and the light side that it had to counteract that. But, you know, when we look at things like, and this is what I love so much about it, because it has this relevance with, like, real life physics. The way I look about it is like a gravitational wave, because that overcorrection that they had with the Empire, it was very much an overcorrection. Everything went
beautiful.
to the dark side, and everything was awful. Everything was so good for a long time, and then everything was awful, and then the rebellion happened, and it was light again, and then the First Order happened, and it went back, and then it finally equalized in this middle, and the gravitational waves stopped in the Force, and now we just have this sort of neutral party with Rey and what is left of the galaxy after all that's happened.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, it's not good necessarily, but it's there.
Well,
and it's not on either side. Like, it overcorrected and overcorrected and overcorrected until it reached that neutral point.
And so there's that argument out there all the time, and it's something I love to argue, because going back to a thing that you brought up earlier, which is the Star Wars RPG that you're playing.
Mm-hmm.
I played a version like 15 years ago, okay, and I was a gray Jedi.
Yeah.
Which to some people don't exactly exist. But when Rey happened, I was like, tell me it don't exist.
I mean, we look at like legend stuff and stuff that was outside of the movies. Qui-Gon Jinn was the ultimate gray Jedi, and you know, it was really interesting. I've heard a lot of theories about like how if Qui-Gon hadn't died to Darth Maul, he would have been the perfect father figure that Anakin needed to be the kind of Jedi that he needed to be.
Yeah.
But because the Force, and this is my personal belief in the theory, the reason Darth Maul was able to kill Qui-Gon, even though Qui-Gon was much more skilled than him, is because the Force was trying to balance itself out. If Qui-Gon had been there for Anakin when he needed him, the light would have stayed in power for too much longer. Mm-hmm. But the Force acted in such a way to overcorrect, and then it kept balancing until reaching this middle ground.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, it's this powerful imagery to me, and I'm in love with it.
I don't know if you guys have read a series of junior novels that Scholastic published during the prequel era called Jedi Apprentice.
I haven't, but I know of them.
And in there, Qui-Gon is like 2 millimeters away from the dark side at one point.
Mm.
Yeah.
He actually falls in love with another Jedi. I mean, there's this really interesting series of sort of narrative points about his life that makes him an infinitely more complex character than what we get in Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the things that Nick and I love about fiction, because when we read novels about the world, it makes the world bigger, but it also makes the world more complex. And I love that.
That's kind of one of the ironic things too, because it was played by Liam Neeson, who basically has never died in a movie before that.
Oh yeah, I suppose that's true.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
It's like, wait, Liam Neeson died in a movie? Like,
I didn't know that.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I never connected those dots, but you're goddamn right.
Yeah. So, the perfect person to play Qui-Gon was.
No one is going to expect it, much like the Spanish Inquisition.
Exactly.
No.
And by the way, Melo, the reason I didn't you read those novels is I don't know how to read. That was a joke I was going to make, but
it's true. He says it's a joke. I'm not so sure.
So what I want to do real quick, guys, we've been at this for a while and we enjoy, but we still got some time left to talk about some things, and we also got our mains and stuff and cooldowns to happen. But what I'd like to do for both of y'all is, again, we're going to have hopefully on for other episodes if you guys want to come back. But
happy to.
For this episode today, we've talked a lot about the things we wanted to talk about and questions we wanted to ask you guys. But, I want to give you guys, a few minutes yourselves to talk about something that's just, like, really important to you, like, or something that's just, for our fans out there that may not be as big into Star Wars as, like, your fans are, because obviously the people who come and listen to you guys, they're coming because they want to listen to Star Wars. something that is just like big for you guys or whatever, just something in the Star Wars multiverse there or universe there that not multiverse, sorry. That is important.
You can call it that.
Yeah,
I wrote a book called Star Wars Multiverse, so you can call it that. Absolutely.
Well, I don't know. Okay, it's an off tangent, right? There's a new movie that came out recently called The Adam Project. I'm a huge Ryan Reynolds fan. And
Right.
It's a movie based on time travel, and he goes back and visits himself and his father, because his father was the one who created time travel. All this apparently.
Right. Right.
But the younger version is asking him about something, and he's like, "Is it this? Is it this? Is it a multiverse?" And he goes, "Multiverse." God, you watch too many movies. like trying to make fun of the whole Marvel thing. So it was.
That's funny.
That's funny. I like it.
But yeah. Anyway, we'll start with Nick. And I think he's been the quietest today, which is I'm not.
Yeah, we
got to
hear you more.
But Nick, tell us something. Maybe even delve a little bit deeper into like the previous question we talked about, like what got you into it. But like instead of not what got you into it, but what's kept you into it so long.
So I think this happened, like I said, when the sequels had come out. I got my excitement for Star Wars came back. I was always a fan, but I really didn't dive into novels and comics and that ancillary media until Disney was basically started over with their canon and made everything we knew Legends, and now they redone a lot of story set between the films and after films. So to me, that's kind of what kept me in. I've loved a lot of the novels they've released. The comics have been my favorite part of this new Disney era of Star Wars. And earlier, I don't know if you guys remember, I mentioned something about nostalgia and how I thought the sequels kind of always played on nostalgia too much, and even other parts of the Disney era. But maybe it was last year before, I can't remember, when they had announced on this Disney Day investor thing where they said there was going to be like 10 new Star Wars series coming out on Disney Plus over the next few years. And, I was excited, of course. I love Star Wars, and I'm, anything with Star Wars, I'm probably going to watch it. But a lot of the things they announced were things that we already know about. Characters we know, spots in the timeline we're already familiar with. And it kind of didn't really excite me as much as I thought it was going to. But I think I've kind of tempered that down a little bit. I'm still excited for him. But I think the High Republic, it's been like my favorite thing in Star Wars the last 2 years. That's kind of given me a lot of the new stuff I want from Star Wars. New characters, new settings, just kind of separating itself from the movies, but also still in the Star Wars universe. That's what I've always wanted, something new from Star Wars. As much as I love the original trilogy, the prequels, and the sequels, I want to see something different. I'm not a fan of rehashing or nostalgia. So right. High Republic has kind of been my thing. That's definitely elevated my fandom, I guess.
Yeah, and seeing stuff that's outside of the original saga, which is the Scout, But to speak to it, here's kind of a follow-up question to that. You said you were kind of excited, but you were kind of let down by the fact that it might be some nostalgia stuff. But has seeing things like Book of Boba Fett and The Mandalorian and stuff has that re-energized your excitement, or has it let you down? How do those make you feel? When it comes to that.
I think they have done some things that are interesting. I like to see where this is going. I won't know for sure because I think these series are all supposed to kind of connect in some way. The ones that take place post Return of the Jedi to something bigger. Mm-hmm. I tell you the one that I really was not excited for up until probably the last couple months was Kenobi. I didn't really like the idea of Kenobi leaving Tatooine, but as soon as the trailer dropped and I watched it, that changed. I am beyond excited for that show, way more than I thought I was ever going to be. I think nostalgia is important. It's always one of those things in Star Wars I'm going to have a back and forth with. I enjoy it when I see it, but sometimes I get a little tired of it.
That love-hate relationship. You got that balance. Yeah. You got that yin and yang, and you just Star Wars.
There you go.
I've seen so many memes since the trailer came out for Kenobi, where with the scene where he's got the visor or the scope or whatever. Mm-hmm. My favorite one so far is you'll see a picture of him with it, and then the next thing says "take lens off," and then he pulls it away from himself. It's that's my favorite one. Anyway,
that's funny.
Melo, what about for you, bud?
I I think what keeps me in Star Wars now is that I love changing media. I love switching from movies to television, to fiction, to comics, even to miniatures. I started painting Star Wars miniatures about a year and a half ago, and it's sort of yet another way of telling the story. Because I get to sort of play with the characters and I get to sort of do things to the characters in different ways. And so I think what I love about Star Wars now is sort of magically discovering the different aspects of Star Wars by shifting gears, by going to television and then seeing a film and then reading comics and then reading. Like, I actually love these Star Wars little golden books. There's some really interesting things happening in there. And so I love the switching. I love the switching around. It's what keeps me like alive when I go to Star Wars.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Can you expand on the golden books?
There are golden books that are sort of like summarizing a movie. And you can there's one for each of the Skywalker movies. But the ones that I love is, there's one that says, I am a Jedi. There's one on Leia called I Am a Princess. And it sort of takes the whole trajectory of her and all of the different aspects of what it means to be a princess in Star Wars, which is very different from being Snow White or Cinderella or Sleeping Beauty. Mm-hmm. And so it's really fascinating to see how these books that are geared to 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, are already sort of making you think about the layers of Star Wars. There's one about being a Wookiee. There's one about being a Sith, about what it means to be a Sith. So even like aspects of evil are sort of added to a 2-year-old.
The kids that read those have poor test grades and they have trouble in class.
No, they don't. They become ambitious. They become ambitious, powerful beings who are Slytherin in Harry Potter. No, they're great people. Let me give you a really interesting point. I've been communicating with somebody who is a psychologist in the West Coast, and she uses the Sith code for people who are surviving physical abuse, sexual abuse, and things like that.
Cool.
Because it's all about the individual power that you have to move on.
Yeah,
Jedi is about sort of leaving all the emotions. The Sith is all about sort of the emotional power of the individual.
Yeah, embracing the emotions and things. Yeah.
That's exactly right. And so it's really interesting how complex Star Wars can be, even on the bad side. Even on the dark side.
One of the things that I love about like philosophy and stuff, especially in fiction, is that my worldview is very much based on what I think is important to hear about. I don't. This is a little bit off topic. I don't like believe in a lot of religion, but what I do believe in is I believe in like different philosophies and stuff and how they apply to our lives. So like, I don't believe Jesus was the Son of God, but Jesus existed. He had good things to say, and I like when fiction, especially Star Wars, includes philosophies like the Jedi and the Sith Code, because what it means is like, because I don't believe in like the real aspects of those kinds of things, but I believe in the practical applications of it. And so like I look at the Sith Code and I look at the Jedi Code and I look at the Gray Jedi Code, which is another thing, and each of them are so important to apply in my daily life. Like, there's no reason that someone couldn't use those codes as a religion, which I think is really, really interesting.
Which technically they were, basically, in the movies.
In the movies, yes, they were effectively using them as a religion, but because it applies similarly to real-life philosophies, I could. And, I look at the Sith Code, and as I've been learning to, not be a people pleaser in my life, I have used part of the Sith Code to, make sure that, I am grounded and I am myself and I, deserve love and respect, and I need to be able to take care of myself. But then it's also still important to look at the Jedi Code and like, but I'm also not the only person on this world, and other people are also deserving of that empathy and that care,
Yep.
And so, like, it's interesting how, and, you know, I think of, you mentioned Harry Potter earlier, and, like, the different houses and how they interact with their philosophies are kind of like that. I really like the way Avatar: The Last Airbender, uses their philosophies regarding to the elements.
Yeah.
I have here. I can't spin it the right way. I have this tattoo on my arm of all of the 4 elements, and like I use their philosophies in my daily life, and you know, and there's so much media out there that uses, even on a fictional standpoint, different philosophies like that, and I think it's really cool to be able to apply those things in real life.
Yeah, and
when you do a podcast on Avatar: The Last Airbender,
I will join. Yes, me too.
We'll get you guys in here. Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Well,
yes, I would love
that one.
I would.
Love that
I
series.
love that show.
I could spend 7 hours. I could spend 7 hours.
So,
on
I think
Avatar.
Speaking of what you're talking about, though, and so again, you talked about, you brought up religion, and so I studied theology for a while, and one of the things that I learned throughout theology is so many things are exactly the same in every religion, but just worded differently sometimes and stuff like that. But the one thing, and we've spoken about this for myself, the one code I live by is the one, like, it's literally, I think, when I looked it up statistically, it's like 93% of religions or something like that. Of course, 97% of stats are made up, but anyway. But like in 93% of religions, the golden rule exists. It may not be called the golden rule, but it's
that
basically that concept of the golden rule, which is you treat others like you want to be treated. That's how I live my life. That's exactly how I at least try to live my life. And I think that when you bring up that aspect of Avatar and all these different things that are doing it, I think the biggest thing that all of those are trying to encapsulate is the struggle of good and evil within ourselves at all times. And how it's easy to it's even easier, I guess I should say, to fall into the darkness. It's harder to keep that light sometimes. But at the same time, like we talked about, like, too much of a good thing is a bad thing. So then when you bring up like religious things, I think about stuff like Westboro Baptist and how, like, then their things and how they're overzealous, to certain things, and that not this. And I don't want to get any bad feedback from people on this, but how that kind of applied to, like, the Jedi Order. In a sense, and how it was looking at it, and how, like, you talked about the Force trying to bring that back and balance that out. And so, yeah, I mean, you can find examples of, like, that's what I love about Star Wars, is you can take so many things in Star Wars and apply them to just, like, normal everyday things you see in life.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, like, so much of it is just like, this is life.
True.
There's the theatrical part that makes some things that, like, a little bit elaborate, or not elaborate. What's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know. But I know what he's trying to say.
Kind of.
They're worldly.
Let me put it in different words for you.
No, just it makes it a little bit, what seems unrealistic to us, or. But anyway, the point
seems extra.
Yeah, it's very extra. But yeah, shoot, I just lost my train of thought because sorry.
One of the things that I say at the beginning of my book on Star Wars is that Star Wars is only fictionally far, far away.
Right.
That
there you
the
go.
story might be far away, but the themes, the ideas, the emotions, the conflicts, the tensions, the history are very much connected to our lives, to our human lives in this world.
I think one of my.
Agree with that. Go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. No, I was just gonna say I think one of my favorite quotes I ever heard was from Dave Filoni. He said something that we love Star Wars for space battles, we love lightsaber duels, we love the makeup of Star Wars, what it looks like, but we don't really watch it for that. We watch it for the characters. We watch it for their struggles, their tribulations, the trials they have to go through, because we can relate to that in our everyday lives.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. Yeah. One of the other things that I like to I like to equate this sort of philosophy thing in fantasy and in media and in fiction is Dungeons and Dragons, the alignment system. Like, they have the good, the evil, and the lawful versus chaos. But like I look at the good and the evil very much as good is selfless and evil is selfish. To extremes, of course.
That's the
like,
word I was looking for. Extreme.
Extremes. There you go. There you go.
God bless.
But it's good. It's selflessness and selfishness to extremes, and that's how I actually view the light and the dark side too. Because when you look at the Sith code, it does take selfishness to an extreme. It's like I am powerful. I seek power. I'm greed, and I will do anything to achieve that. Whereas the Jedi Code is very much extremely selfless. It's, I have no emotion. I will do the right thing at all times.
Go ahead.
Which is, it's very innately, and when you look at, like, morality, like, objectively, it is very much good is selfless, evil is selfish, but only to extremes, right? It's good to be selfish on a non-extreme level because you need to take care of yourself. You need to, you need to make sure you're set in life, and you can't always be selfless because otherwise you might be giving too much of yourself to other people. So what is maybe best is taking sort of a neutral approach to life.
But there's an argument in psychology that there's truly only one selfless act. By the true definition of the word selfless, the only true selfless act is giving your life for someone because you can't get anything out of it. Whereas, and so there's an argument that being selfless at times is actually being very selfish as well, because you were trying to fulfill something, whether it be within yourself, whether it be to the deity, like you're talking about, like, in D&D, whether it be to the deity, because by doing it to the deity, you're selfishly receiving something from them. So to say that it's extreme selflessness is also saying that it is extreme selfishness, but they're just on the opposite ends of how they are viewed.
No, I agree with that to an extent, but also, like, a lot of it for me is the way I view alignment in D&D and the way I view, like, light and dark side force in Star Wars is very much about your primary reason for doing something, right? Because something you're doing selfishly can also be selfless if putting you in a better position can help other people. And the opposite can be true. You can be getting something from doing something selflessly, but if you're doing it for the other person primarily and not for yourself, then that is more of a selfless act than a selfish act.
Right, and that's pretty much what I just said. Is that they're both the same thing, or can be the same thing. They're just on polar opposites of how the acts are done, right? In that sense, right?
And I think when you're looking at morality objectively in fiction, nonfiction, in the real world, or otherwise, it very much is about the reason you do something, not the act itself. Because if you're doing something good because you're getting paid to do it, right? And that's like the only reason. Well, that's
still selfish.
That's selfish and evil.
So then that's what I'm trying to say. Is like so can you again? I gave you the argument there of that the only true selfless act, by definition, in a lot of people's, this is an argument. Trust me, this is an argument that's been going on for years. Okay, so it's like we're not going to answer it fully here, but I've posed that question. I'll pose it to Nick and Melo as well. Is give me an example of something that's truly selfless other than giving your life, because
I can't.
Exactly, because the majority of these selfless acts that you're going to mention, you still receive something from.
Oh no, I 100% agree with you. I just think only Sith deals in absolutes.
No, I mean that's fair, but I'm just. That's the thing. There's no absolute answer to it, right? And
I agree.
And that's the point I was trying to bring up, right? Is I guess the biggest thing is it boils down to like a semantics type of thing, right?
It totally boils down to semantics, but in my opinion, there's so much gray area there, and it's like
we just don't have a better word for it. Like that's the truth. It's like
technically, the only true selfless act, yes, is that. But there's so much gray area that that point almost doesn't matter, right?
I think also the problem is that assuming that giving your life is a selfless act doesn't forget all of the things that you give by existing with others. And your dying might, in a way, be damaging to the people who love you and the people that depend on you and the people that are related to you.
I 100% agree. It also can be selfish.
There's something very Sith, as you were saying, about sort of the absolute of death, because you were talking about this, and I kept thinking about Kenobi dying in New Hope. He dies. Sorry.
You've already talked about it.
Kenobi dies in New Hope. I am so sorry for my audience now. There is so much there that he's able to give by dying, but because he can sort of come back as a voice, as a specter, as a force ghost, there are other things that are sort of attached to it that we see him in Empire and we see him in Return of the Jedi to sort of continue the training of Luke. And it's one of the things that I love about the idea of death in Star Wars that is more than just disappearing.
Yeah.
And I find that really very appealing and very intriguing and very beautiful.
Yeah.
Because death is very terminal to me.
Yeah.
And I love the death of Kenobi because it's not a simple death.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would say even Vader's sacrifice is not that simple either.
No, it's not.
As a person that it is a selfless act that he commits and saves Luke and therefore saves the entire galaxy, wins the war. But the only person that really knows what goes on in that moment is Luke.
Yeah.
Yep.
Luke is the only one that knows. The rest of the galaxy is never going to know. Luke can tell the story. They're not going to believe. They may not believe him. They've seen Vader do, horrible, monstrous things for years.
Yeah, and they're just going to be like, man, that's your daddy. You just trying to make your daddy look good.
Right. So, I guess my question would be, Vader do that selfishly? I mean, he did save Luke, but was that a selfish thing for him to do?
I think I see...
Because my wife, her thing was when she first watched Star Wars, she was always curious. She said, so Vader, he does save Luke and kills the Emperor. He just still did a ton of terrible things. He killed kids. I mean, he brought oppression to the galaxy. So, why does he still get to be a Force ghost? Why does he get, basically go to Force heaven? She never understood that, and I kind of agreed with her.
Well, here's the interesting thing that I look at it. How I look at that is, at least in fiction, when we can break it down more, I don't think, especially in Star Wars, that I don't think that self-sacrifice is even a selfless act in a lot of cases, and especially in Vader's, because one of the things that we look at when we look more into Legends material and stuff is the suit that he was made, or the suit that Palpatine put him in, was actually made to keep him in pain. It could have been better, and he could have been faster, stronger, and not in pain, but it was deliberately created to make him slower and in pain constantly, because that is what kept him alive. What we see from the Sith is that they have these powers to keep them alive with hate. That's how Darth Maul survived being cut in half. That is how Darth Vader survives being burned and nearly dying by Kenobi.
It's just a flesh wound.
It's just a flesh wound. But as soon as he gets to that light side, the reason he dies in that moment is because he no longer hates. And he's not letting the pain get to him anymore. And so he can't use that force power generated from his hate to keep him alive anymore. And now that he's on the good side of things, he's been dealing with hate and pain and anger and anguish for 20-some years now. Him dying in that moment wasn't his choice. He told Luke not to try to save him, not because he wanted to die. He didn't have a choice at that point. He was going to die because he could not hold on to his hate any longer.
Yeah.
However, even if
he
had
did
that
say
choice,
he did say that, you know, he said we have to save you. He said it's too late for that.
it's too late, and it wasn't because I'm not gonna make it. It wasn't like you don't have time. It's like he like nothing he could possibly do. But even if Vader had that choice, right? Even if Vader had that choice and he purposefully died in that moment, it would not have been a selfless act because he was releasing himself from the regrets of the last 20 years, from him murdering the Jedi Order and committing Order 66.
I mean, yes. So you can give examples. The point that I was making earlier when I brought up the whole selfless act is like jumping in front of a bullet for somebody, or pushing someone out of the way of a car and you get hit by it. Like it's shit like that. Like you're going into a deeper philosophy that is way beyond to try to prove a point, but that's not the point. It's like not every example of giving your life is going to be selfless. That's not the point of what I was trying to say. Like for example, the most selfish death, and probably the saddest, is Yoda just giving up on life because he's bored listening to Luke's ass.
You guys are terrible.
I will give a really good example of a selfless death in Star Wars.
Okay.
And that is Han Solo and Kylo in the first sequel movie in Episode 7. Because when we broke down that scene later, initially it seemed like Han wasn't expecting it, right? And he was like trying to save his son, but Kylo specifically says, "I know what I have to do, but I don't have the strength to do it." And we initially, at least for me, and what a lot of people thought was, he knows he has to choose the right thing, and he doesn't know how to. Yeah. And Han's like, "I'll help you with that," and then Kylo turns to the dark side and kills him. That is not what that scene was. That scene was, I know what I have to do to be what I want to be in this moment. Snoke needs me to hold on to my hate and my anger, and I want to be like my grandfather. I want to be like Vader. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I have the strength to kill my father to do it, though. And Han's like, I understand. He points the lightsaber at himself off screen, and Kylo turns it on. That's what happens. Han effectively kills himself, gives Kylo the opportunity.
I mean, that's a good theory.
That's one way of thinking about it.
Yeah,
that's kind of how I interpret it.
That's how I view that situation.
Right, because you're like, and the reason I say that is because there's no like actual proof that he points it at himself off screen, right? Like it's just like that's a good theory, but and I think that could be like I that's a completely believable thing, and I hope that really is what like for me personally, I think that's even cooler than what the other scenario was, but yeah, I mean that definitely would be an example of a selfless death.
But the reason I believe it like that is because Han's reaction was not one of surprise; it was one of simple pain, right? He wasn't shocked to have been stabbed by Kylo.
But he could have also not been shocked because he expected, he knew what his son had turned into. Because you also saw in the interaction between him and Leia prior to him talking to Kylo, you saw an interaction with Leia about how he viewed his son. So like it could easily be just like he's not shocked because,
what he is. Yeah.
He's like, this motherfucker was this way anyway, like.
Or it might be that he, when he is killed by his son, he actually understands that point that you're saying, that Han then in that moment of his death realizes that what Kylo needed to do was to kill his father, to sort of keep the hate and the Sith. And so I really like the way that you're interpreting that scene. I'm just thinking that it might happen after Han Solo.
That's true. It could be
stabbed by the lightsaber.
Right. Yeah. So yeah.
But either way, walking out onto that platform, like no matter how you look at that scene, whether it's with my interpretation or with an alternate interpretation where he realizes after the fact, or with the common interpretation of he went there to save Kylo and that is what he was planning to do the whole time, and he was like, you killed me. But no matter what, he walked out there and he knew he was either going to come back with
or die.
Son,
yeah.
He was prepared to die. Like,
he was totally prepared for it, and he was going to go. He was going to go there. He was almost probably expecting to die there.
Yeah,
and that was a really, really powerful selfless act of him.
I mean, to an extent, but it's also a selfish act. And again, when we talk about and I don't want to have another 2 hours talking about this, so I'm going to say this, and we'll be done with this, and we'll talk about something else. But like, it could be selfish in the sense of like where Melo brought the point earlier, where his death, you saw what it did to Chewie, So he selfishly went out there knowing he was probably going to die. You know what I'm saying? Leaving behind Chewie with no dog anymore. Talking about, I don't know if you guys know that whole meme about how Wookiees live forever, so technically Han was the pet. But anyway, like, but anyway, like the point is like, that could be viewed as a selfish part. Like the physical, like I said, the psychological view and argument of it is we could go on for days.
Yeah.
So like the point is like, let's don't try to bring up any more examples of this or that, because that is a completely different episode.
We can move on.
Yeah, we can move on to it. Yeah. So speaking of moving on, we're gonna move on from the campaign. We've had a lot of great stuff.
This has been so fucking awesome.
Fantastic, and again, we are definitely gonna have Nick and Melo on again in the future. Somebody's like scratching or rubbing something because I can hear it really loudly. Anyway,
I'm not scratching anything. You can't see my hands, but I'm not scratching.
Are you sure you still got those pants on?
No, God.
Anyway, so we're gonna move on, guys. From the main topic, we're gonna go to this week's mains.
Yep.
And since we do have guests on, we're going to allow them to go first.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you guys watched the episode, and we talked about this a little bit before we started recording today, this week's mains is mainly about just something that is going on news-wise or otherwise that's, nerd-related. It doesn't have to be Star Wars. It can be anything, kind of thing. But just something in your life. So, Melo, what's your main this week?
I just finished an amazing anime called the Heike Story, Heike. It's an anime that came out in 2021 in Japan, and it's now playing on Funimation. And it is based on an 11th century historical event of the war between two families for the power of Japan. And this anime, it's only 11 episodes. The novel is 900 pages long.
Holy cow.
And they've turned it into this visually stunning anime of 11 episodes of 22 minutes. And I am blown away. No. I am fucking blown away.
That sounds really good.
I just gasp every 5 minutes, every image, every moment, it's just. So that's been my sort of like my nerd orgasm of the week, was finishing the Heike Story. It's just been an incredible show.
That sounds really interesting. I'll have to check that out.
We'll definitely have to check that out.
That sounds really cool.
It's really great. Yeah.
What about you, Nick?
So that's mine. That's mine.
That's awesome.
Not much for me this week, really. Like I said, as a spring break, so I was just trying to enjoy some downtime. But I guess the main thing that I've enjoyed is I don't know if you've listened to our episode on Rebels, but we love that show. And Haley has never watched the show before, so she's kind of going through her first watch with it with me. This is probably my third or fourth time, but it is my favorite Star Wars story outside of the original trilogy. That's how much I love the show. So kind of seeing her reactions, and I know when things are coming, so I'm just excited to see her reaction to those things. So that's been a cool bonding moment for us.
That's fun.
Yeah. Awesome.
That's kind of been mine for the week.
I had to know that Nick was going to bring the wife up again. He's trying to get brownie points right now, dude. He's like, babe, you gotta go watch this episode with them because I talk about you a lot. But no, it's good. It's good that you do it. I talk about my wife all the time. It's okay.
It's true. It's true.
That's what they're here
What about
for.
you, Tyler? What's your main this week?
So speaking of that, actually, speaking of my wife, she's actually on her way home right now. But I was super excited. She just went to her first Squish meet.
Oh.
So for those who have watched the episode before or have talked about it, my wife's really into these things called Squishmallows. Not to be confused with Carmelo.
I'm very confused. I don't know what that is.
So it's these big pillow thing, like stuffed animal pillow things, and they're called Squishmallows. They're very soft. I don't have one down here. I have a ton upstairs. But there's a bunch of different ones, and some of them are like super rare. Some of them are hard to get because they're exclusively at certain places and things like that. And they went and had this like swap meet thing at the Five Below parking lot. And the reason why they went to the Five Below was because there was a new line of them being released at the Five Below this morning. Oh. And all this, like, yeah, it was crazy. So she's on her way back. But but prior to that, I was able to acquire. There she is. There's the hippo stomping upstairs. Prior to, I was able to acquire some of those ones that you couldn't get before. I was able to trade with and everything. So that's my nerdy thing. The other thing, I guess, that's like a selfish thing for me is I finally got to talk to a tattoo artist and start planning out my lightning bolt tattoo.
Oh, nice.
For my forearm. So kind of getting a price and in general price at least on what that's going to be. So excited for that for myself here soon.
My main this week. Yeah. My main this week is I just finally I didn't realize it had come out yet. But just the other day I had seen the Obi-Wan trailer and I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited to finish Boba Fett. There's so much Star Wars stuff that I'm excited to watch, and and that's all good and stuff. But another nerdy thing is Tyler last night was helping me with one of my Magic decks that I have. It's a Atla Palani egg deck, and trying to make it a little bit more competitive so that I can. Sit with the big boys,
Come sit at the big boy table with Daddy Tyler.
But he's helping me. He's helping me with the cards and the deck and stuff, which has been a lot of fun and looking to get that going.
Yeah. So
nice.
Those are awesome. So those are our mains. We also usually have for Nick and Melo. We have like a cool down section. What me and Spencer talk about sometimes in the cool down section is varied, but this week. I'm going to reiterate kind of what I talked about in the warm-up and give a little bit more about, the special episode. And the biggest reason is it's really on my heart still with everything. We talked about a bunch of things today, within Star Wars that had to do with, the war between good and evil within ourselves. And a lot of times that happens in between just, these 5 inches, for a lot of people, and sometimes
6 for me.
Whatever.
Got a big head.
I'm giving the average. You do got a big old head. I got a big head too, but
we're talking about inches now. We're talking about inches now.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that kind of podcast.
Different head, Melo. Different head. The one on my shoulders. But that
got
battle,
it.
That battle is is lost by some people. And that's what I was going to bring up. And so in our other podcasts, and we can even link it on this one as well, and just in case, we linked stuff like the suicide hotline and stuff like that. We want to make sure that people have access to help for the things that they need. The thing is while trained professionals are the best, obviously, some of us don't have access to that due to financial situations, time situations, whatever. Your friends are out there. The reason why we have friends and people in our lives, and maybe even if you feel like you don't have any friends, guess what? Contact me or Spencer. You can make one. But the networks that we have in our lives are there, for that reason. And I'll guarantee you. And this is a saying that I like to tell people all the time, and it's something that I had to remind myself of after this week, was I'd much rather listen to you tell me what's going on than have to read your obituary. You know what I'm saying? So,
True.
you know,
Indeed.
if you're going through things, reach out to us, you know, and take a look at that episode, and yeah. So that's the cool down for this week. So.
And yeah, and I 100% agree with you. You know.
We want to thank Melo and Nick. We're also going to link set up a link to their podcast.
Yeah.
It's Nick and Melo's Hyperspace. It's a wonderful, wonderful podcast. You know, even if, especially if you're not that into Star Wars, because maybe you don't know as much about it. Maybe you've seen the movies, whatever, and but you've always maybe been interested. Their podcast and their view on things and the details that they go into are amazing. They're going to help you, understand that universe even more. And then maybe, because maybe there's been questions about it before that, you didn't have the answer to. You can go check out their podcast, message them and be like, hey, I was always wondering about this. That might give them inspiration for their next podcast. Who knows?
Yeah.
But definitely go check out Nick and Melo's Hyperspace. We appreciate you guys being on so much, hanging around for a minute.
It's been an absolute pleasure and an honor.
Absolutely,
and it's been a lovely conversation, and you guys are wonderful, beautiful people, and it's been a treat having just this great conversation.
Nick, he doesn't know me yet. He doesn't know me.
I love when we talk about Star Wars.
No, he does.
More than
you don't give
Star
yourself
Wars.
enough
That's
credit.
just beautiful.
Absolutely.
And yeah, definitely when Nick, when you come up, we'll Carmelo, you're gonna have to come up too, and we're gonna have to watch Star Wars together.
Yep.
Catch that original.
I would be happy to.
I'll gladly host and make the popcorn.
Yeah.
So.
I was gonna say when we come up, it'll be beginning of May, so Doctor Strange will be out. We all should plan a trip for that.
Me and Nick are already gonna go see that. So.
We definitely need.
I was gonna surprise Spencer, but thanks for whatever.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm on my last week of classes that week, but I can certainly show up.
Yeah. Well, the wife still hasn't heard, hopefully, so
No, I spoiled it.
Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, you did. God, no, thank you guys. Don't hang up yet. We're gonna do our sign off, but we're gonna talk to you for a second. Everybody out there, we love you.
Stay happy, stay healthy, stay safe. We love you so much. Thank you for coming back every week.
We'll see you next time.
Peace.